You are listening to the Lawyer Stories podcast with host Benny Gold. Lawyer Stories was founded in July 2017 on Instagram and is an expanding global network of lawyers and law students sharing their personal journeys to the noble profession of the practice of law. Join us on this podcast as we dig deeper into these stories and hear from lawyers and law students from around the world in all areas of the legal profession. Here at Lawyer Stories, we believe that every lawyer has a story. What's yours?
Welcome to the Lawyer Stories podcast with Benny Gold.
Lawyer Stories podcast.
Today we welcome Howard Ankin, owner at Ankin Law, focusing on personal injury, medical malpractice, mass torts, workers' comp, and products liability in the Chicagoland area and all over Illinois. Howard, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Benny.
Yeah, pleasure to have you on. I know you have a lot of experience. You're a seasoned attorney. I'm looking forward to getting some wisdom and hearing your story. So thanks for being here.
Well, just ask my wife, Tracy Ankin. You might not get that much wisdom.
Okay, well, we'll see about that. So let's just kick it right off. You're a third-generation lawyer. Tell us, first of all, tell us where you're from and what it was like growing up in a family where the law was an everyday part of life.
Oh, well, we could be here for days then, Benny.
It's all right. We got some time. I got time.
I grew up just outside the city. I grew up just outside the city limits of Chicago in the first suburb north of the city. My father was a lawyer and my grandfather was a lawyer, but on my mom's side. So I'm the firstborn son of the firstborn grandson. As the first grandson on both sides. So in my mom's world, I was going to be a lawyer because her dad was a lawyer and my dad's a lawyer.
Wow. Okay. All right. So what was that like being, being with the lawyer? And I know, you were going to court as a young age and stuff. So what was it like having? You said was it your dad?
Yeah, my dad was a lawyer, and I got to tell you, growing up, I didn't know much different about it. This is all I knew was, from law, because both my grandfather was a lawyer and my dad was a lawyer. But later in life, I learned that, most people that became lawyers, they figured out what they wanted their law career to be later. So they met a teacher, they had a class, something like that. I'm doing today, I guess, what I was always destined to be doing.
That's amazing. So what area did they practice? Your dad and your grandfather?
So that was a little different. My grandfather was a real estate lawyer, and my dad, for all intents and purposes, was a criminal defense lawyer. Although he did, like many lawyers of his generation, he was a general practitioner, general practice lawyer. But for the most part, injury was there's over 100,000 lawyers in the state of Illinois. And what's great about being a lawyer is everybody can practice law for their own personality or in the way that they feel that they want to practice. So I just gravitated towards the contingency fee practice. It's never great about keeping hours or wanting to get retainers from people.
Okay, so how did that happen? If you have real estate and then criminal in your family, what was it about the injury and the mass torts and the product liability that really sort of piqued your interest?
Well, I got to tell you, it was a confluence of two things for me. The first thing was, since my dad was a criminal defense lawyer, I kind of always thought maybe I'd be a criminal defense lawyer also. But first, after my first year of law school, I went to work for the Cook County Public Defender's Office. Cook County makes up the Chicagoland area. And you know how you do something where once you do it once or twice, you get used to it?
Yep.
My job that summer was to go into lockup and to go talk to the people that were prisoners and get certain information.
Okay.
So you used to walk through you see in a movie with the clanging jail gates behind you, and you walk through the yard.
You're like that one.
Just as scared my last day of the summer that I was on the first day of the summer.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So it was already not quite for me. But then when I did start to practice, I was not good at getting paid. So I was doing a lot of legal work,
Right.
But nobody ever had any money.
Right.
So I just, it was like, I wasn't good about being able to get the retainer from the client. So the contingency fee field, which is like what I find in workers' comp, personal injury cases where I get a percentage of what I recover, it just spoke to me.
Yeah, and you talk about having different personalities, like there's something for everybody within the law, like who has a type of personality. Like, what was it about your dad, do you think, that like kind of, he was the criminal defense attorney? Like, what do you think was different from him and like why he did that versus you like doing the PI?
I just find people that do, I just see this because maybe I saw it in my dad, but I just see people even today that are criminal defense lawyers. First, they're very mentally tough people. They just are. And second, I think really good criminal defense lawyers, they're kind of lone wolves.
Okay.
Like being the most popular person in the room, it's not something that they aspire to. They're mentally tough, and they're also not looking to be the person that is like loved by everybody. Just as a personality when they're good. So for whatever reason, my dad is and has always been a very mentally tough person, and I just think like the criminal defense field spoke to him.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So like, did you always know you'd follow the path, or like just lawyer in general, like that you'd follow the path, or did you ever think about doing anything else?
So I got to tell you, so in terms of summer jobs, so when I dialing it back a year or two, I went to work on the options exchange in the OEX pit for a summer, where I worked for two locals, and I was checking trades, and like on the weekends, or like it was double witching hour, I have to come in at the end of the period and like make sure the trades all worked out. So anyways, it was fast paced. I liked it. It seemed like it was like, where people were making a lot of money at the time. And I remember I came home one day and I said, Mom, these two guys that I'm working for this summer, they said, look, finish up your fourth year of college here in Chicago, and you'll come working for us, and we'll give you a job, and we'll make this thing happen.
Wow.
Yeah. And my mom said, absolutely nothing doing. You're going to law school.
Really?
And you can figure out what you want to do with your life.
That's amazing. And I mean, like we discussed, you grew up with lawyers, your dad, your grandfather. Like, is there memories of being around there, like a specific story that like kind of stuck with you, even though it's a different area of practice? Was there something that really kind of stayed with you, resonated?
So when your dad's a criminal defense lawyer, I got 1,000,006 stories. So
wow. Okay.
I was already doing stuff like by the time I was in junior high that like, maybe people that are just starting out in my office, like doing like ground level stuff, I was always doing. So in those days, there was no cell phone. And so my dad, his clients, they had our home phone number, and they had my dad's office number.
Right.
And so when my dad was in transition, he always wanted people to be able to reach it. So, my job was when, I would come home after school or after football practice before my dad got home. My mom might be making dinner, but like the phone would start ringing like from 5:30 to 6:30.
Okay.
And I'd be like legal assistant.
Really?
Calls, whatever. So my dad would walk in the door and he would be like, okay, give me the list. And as he's taking his coat off, I'd be like, well, Mr. Smith called and Mr. Jones called and whatever.
Wow.
And my dad would go up to my parents' bedroom, return some phone calls real quick, or he'd decide if there was an emergency there or not. Then we'd eat dinner. Then my dad would spend like a half hour returning phone calls after dinner. That was kind of like my childhood.
I can totally imagine that too, Howard, because like it was only landlines. I mean, not until I was in college did we have a cell phone. So I can totally imagine that. And it wasn't every day that the phones were just ringing, like after football practice when you were at your house?
Well, as I got older then, I was close with my dad, still am, but like it just created 1,000,006 stories for me. So, I'll give you two. So when I was real young, in my bedroom and I'm playing with like, I don't know, the Matchbox cars and whatever. And all of a sudden I hear like, it's like a, weekend afternoon. And, like I could hear like the roar of the motorcycles. They're just getting like louder and louder. And the next thing you know, I like kind of peek out the window a little bit. And oh my God, I was so nervous. And I come running down and I'm like, Dad, the mob squad is here.
The mob squad.
Like hiding. And my dad's like, don't worry about it. And so, there's all these people and they're wearing their like leather and their what have you. And my dad opens the door to the front of our house and he walks right out and 30 motorcycles are there. And my dad walks up to the guy and whatever, but it was like,
and he did he hand him a bag of cash?
Yeah, probably. Exactly. They're coming to deliver my dad the retainer agreement.
That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah. So, but as I got older, it was probably like, now that, I got older kids at this point, but like, it's like spring break, winter break, that kind of stuff. And I'm sure, we didn't do that many family vacations and stuff in my childhood. So I'm sure like my mom was probably saying to my dad, like, oh my God, it's like a week, it's 2 weeks, like 3 weeks. Like, what am I going to do with these kids? They're climbing the wall.
Right.
So my dad would take me, okay, for like a couple days, every spring break, every winter break. It was like my time to go with my dad.
Okay.
So to have like little kid bring a coloring book and later I'd be carrying his briefcase. All right. So like one time, my dad gets me up, we get in the car, and my dad is all excited. They switched over from 8-track tape to cassette.
Okay.
Got a new car, and he's like, look at this cool stuff. We got cassette tape.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
He puts the cassette tape in, and this was one of his cases that we were going down on 26th and Cal, the criminal courthouse, and they were doing a sting operation, okay? And my dad's client was like shaking down a guy for some money. And so the guy that he was shaking down for money said that he needed to bring, my dad's client must have been brilliant, okay? He was bringing a friend with that was gonna help him get the money that he needed for the shakedown. Just happened to be an undercover police officer.
Really? Okay.
So they take the whole thing.
Wow.
And I'm listening to it. My dad's like, we're listening to like what you're going to hear when we go to court.
Okay.
Anyways, whatever happens, I'm in like an 8th grade. And my dad says to the client, look, you're going to go away. You're going to go to jail on the weekends for like a month. And so for the next 4 weeks, you are going to go in on a Friday at like 5, and you're going to come out on Monday morning so you could work all week, but you're going to go to jail for the weekend.
Wow.
So my dad says to him something like, you're going to go to the spa. It's going to be like going to the spa on the weekend. This is what you're going to do. Anyways, this guy was a very, very large, imposing gentleman. Okay.
Yeah.
Where like I was scared just to stand next to him, like when I was with my dad for the day, when he was like pleading him on this thing.
Right.
Okay? So my dad says to him, this is my son, Howard. And what you're going to do is, because I guess my dad was going to be nervous that he was going to blow this thing off and then there was going to be trouble.
Right.
You're going to call my son every Friday afternoon when he gets home from school, and you're going to let him know that you are calling, and then you're going to go in for the weekend.
Right.
And every Friday for like this 6 weeks, whatever, it's 4 to 6 weeks, he'd call, he'd be like, is your pappy home? No, Rufus, not home. He'd be like, you tell your dad that I'm going to the spa.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And you tell him it's all good.
That's so funny.
And my dad would come home at night and be on my list, and I'd be like, Dad, Rufus your main man. Rufus, your main man, went to the spot.
That's awesome. And your dad was like, good job, son.
Long story, but that was my childhood.
That's amazing. Wow. That's kind of cool. So like, no, I mean, it's a great experience. I mean, you just kind of grew up in the family, just kind of being next to the lawyers. So, why? So we've talked a little bit about like why personality, and we've talked like you think it's like the sort of like I'm sorry, why personal injury, and you told me it was like personality type of thing. Is that that's kind of what you said?
Yeah, my dad, when you're a criminal defense lawyer, you get caught up a lot at the courthouse. So in my dad's day, before there was like MapQuest and, different types of things, my dad might have had to be in 3 courthouses at 9 a.m. So like he'd go to one and he'd be telling another client, like tell him to pass the call to the end of the call. And then like at the third courthouse, like the court, he knew like the clerk liked him and knew that he was always late. So he put that one at the end. So he had to know how to like get from like this courthouse to this courthouse to this courthouse. But anyway, so let's say it was like a complicated divorce or like somebody got into, like where they needed somebody for an injury case. My dad had his referral lawyers that he would refer cases to, and those lawyers might refer him cases back.
Right.
And like, so my dad's relationship with them, he always talks so fondly of like the referring lawyers that was like the injury lawyers that he was working with. And, he made it sound like those lawyers were like so great.
Right.
So a little bit in my mind, I wanted to be the personal injury lawyer. I wanted to get the cases that were on referral. So even to this day, I do have a large number of lawyers that, as far as like how I market for business, I have 110 people working for me.
Wow.
I get a lot of referrals from co-counsel lawyers, and I treat them, I feel that they treat them like they're my dad referring me the case.
That's amazing. Congratulations on that. So I actually want to dial it back and ask about your law school experience a little bit. Like, we talked about growing up in a house with your dad as the lawyer and a couple good stories with that, and going to the spa and so tell me about your law school experience a little bit. Like, what was that like? Did you enjoy it? Was it just kind of like an extension of college? Was it challenging?
I got to tell you, I graduated law school in 1993. And the economy was not really great, like in 91, 92. So I ended up going to a city law school, and, I was kind of, I went to the university. I was from the Chicagoland area. I went to the University of Illinois. Then I came back to working and went to a city law school at John Marshall Law School. And, my dad really kind of pushed me towards that, because he knew that I'd be meeting a lot of people and like learning to practice within the community that I worked in. And it was very smart. Like I know a lot of people from, working in Illinois, going to University of Illinois, and then also like a lot of lawyers that refer me business I went to law school with. So that was great. It was just that when I was in law school, there was a lot of lawyers, it was the days before a cell phone. People had answering machines. Mm-hmm. So there'd be students that like already took the bar exam that had already graduated years ahead of me, a couple years ahead of me. And they'd be like they'd be calling from a payphone to like listen to their answering machine. And if there was like a law firm that said they're calling for an interview, they'd be already dressed in a suit. They'd be like reading law books or case law, so that they could they'd be already in the loop and be able to go over and interview for a job. So anyways, the timing of when I went to law school, it was just, I don't know, the economy was tight. It wasn't all like, I don't know, fun and games. And for me, it was just the environment that I grew up in. My parents weren't paying for me to live in an apartment in by law school and go out and drinking or whatever.
Yeah.
I was actually, I went from undergrad, and then I went back home and lived in my high school bedroom.
Sure.
And, my parents were like, basically like, eat whatever food you need to eat out of the refrigerator. Yeah. And they helped drive me as much as they could, but I was taking public transportation. And it was at least an hour to get to and from law school. So when I went to law school, it was a job.
So did you answer the phone still
working.
were you answering the phone still for your dad when you got
And
back?
I was still doing whatever I could do for my dad.
That's kind of an internship, I'd say, right?
Yeah, yeah. So it was great for me on one hand because when I graduated and, my parents paid for law school, but at the same time, I worked, I started working after my first year of law school and I worked during law school. So I was working and studying. I was ready the day I graduated from law school and passed the bar exam. I was practice ready, and I also graduated with no law school debt.
That's amazing.
So I was ready to go. So my best time of my life was not law school by far. It was a time of getting my act together.
It was a grind. It sounded like a grind.
Yeah, it was a grind. Yeah.
So like and after law school, you worked for 2 firms out of law school for a total of like not even 3 years. It was like 2 years and 9 months. So I think
it was 3 years and 9 months actually, but
what was it?
I think it was more like 3 years and 9 months.
All right, so my math was bad. That's why I became a lawyer. But anyway, so when did you know it was time to launch your own firm?
So I worked for a firm for my first year, and as tough of a guy that my dad could ever be, and smart about being a lawyer, the first guy that I worked with, he was really tough as nails. I'd get to work before 7 a.m. and he was already there. And when I left at about 7:30 at night, he was still at his desk.
Wow.
So he was a worker. So I got a lot of good work ethic for working for Pete during that first year. But I knew that wasn't the place where I was going to make my career. And
was
then
that
I went
a personal
to work
injury
for,
firm too? Was that a personal?
What is that?
Was that personal injury too?
Personal injury firm.
Okay.
And then I worked for another very successful personal injury lawyer. I worked for Jay, and that was going great. And I probably could have spent the rest of my career working there, but a confluence of 2 things happened to me at that time. One, I was chasing the money. So I was practicing a firm that was farther downstate in Illinois that wasn't directly in the Chicagoland area. And I dated a woman, and she wanted to move back to Chicago. And there was a motivation for me to kind of chase her back up to the Chicago area at the time.
Right.
And more importantly, my dad represented a lady who actually he helped her with a traffic ticket, and her grandson was involved in a very significant automobile accident. And my dad either needed to either he was going to refer that to another lawyer, or he wanted to know if he wanted to refer it to me. And so based on that particular case, it was like I probably would have continued to practice longer working for other people.
Okay.
But it was like my dad's probably he sensed that was going to be like his big case of his career, which it was. And anyways, so I came to work. I started my own practice, and my dad referred me the case. But anyways, that thing ended up settling for $2.65 million a couple of years later, and it was the launch pad for not only me starting my own law practice, but it was the launch pad for me economically being able to move forward with my law practice.
Sure. So did you co-counsel that with your dad?
Yeah. So then, my dad and I worked on it together. We shared the fees 50-50.
Yep.
And it was, I think we did a great job. We ended up, the kid that we represented and his mother, even though the case was over, we ended up, he had some special needs, and we were constantly fighting with the bank that was overseeing his money. And so I probably ended up actively helping him for probably, 5, 7, 10 years, even after the case was over.
I think that's a great story. I mean, that's like a pivotal piece of your career right there. And it's almost kind of, I don't know what the word is, but it's kind of interesting how it was like your dad and you co-counseling a case after all those years of going to court with him, being on, 8th grade, going to, answering the phones after football practice, and all of a sudden he gets his personal injury case as a result of representing a client, and like there you are working with him, and it launched your career because you were able to obtain a significant settlement. So that I think that's really, really kind of cool and interesting.
Yeah, it was totally my dad, because my dad always prided himself on that he was just there to help people. That was his thing. So I kind of market that today. I'm here to help, but that was really taken from my dad, and he like just thought it was great that like something like a traffic ticket that most people wouldn't have taken, he helped somebody with it, and it led to led to a referral, and that the world is round, and it worked out for him. So he used to talk about that. It's a couple of years back now, but he prided himself on that story.
Yeah.
But it was even more so though. My dad, he was kind of like, I looked at him. I'm going to need you to we had a lot of witnesses. We had a lot of exhibits. I'm going to get this ready. I need you to keep track of all the evidence coming in and all the stuff that I needed. So he's like, I got it. So we're going to a final pretrial. We were going to try the case on Monday, and we were in a final pretrial. I don't remember if it was on a Thursday or Friday before the Monday trial, where they were going to start picking the jury. And my dad had to be somewhere else. So I'm going to the final pretrial, and he's like, just let me know if I need to suit up on Monday or not.
Yeah.
So anyways, we go to this final pretrial. There's multiple lawyers sitting in this judge's chambers. And, I'm all ready to go. So anyways, there was in the case that I was in, there was two other plaintiffs. It was a car, and then it ricocheted. So there was plaintiffs that were represented by other lawyers. Okay. So anyways, there was $3 million worth of insurance. The other money went to the other plaintiffs that were involved in the case, and my client got the lion's share. We ended up having to work that out later. But anyway,
yeah.
So we're in the final pretrial, and the judge says, "What's your demand?" And I'm like, "Judge, my client needs at least $5.5 million from what my expert reports say." And he dismisses me. He's like, "But he doesn't need it all now." And he's like, to the defense lawyer, "Are you paying the $3 million policy or not?" And he's hemming and he's hawing and he's hemming. Meantime, my dad, I had maybe $50,000 at that time in costs.
Okay.
Which is all the money in the world.
Right.
And probably if this case went south, I was going to have to wrap it all up and go back to work for somebody.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there. I got a huge amount of money at stake, thinking I'm going to be involved in a 3-week trial, difficult liability situation, multiple experts that I got to coordinate to come here. Oh, and the judge looks at this defense lawyer. He's like, "Well, there's this problem, there's this problem, there's this problem." He's like, "Look, I've had enough of this. Okay? You're not offering anything, and I'll see you on Monday." The defense lawyer goes, "I didn't say that."
Okay.
And the judge says, "Then what are you doing? Are you paying the policy or not?" And the guy looks at him and goes, "Okay, we'll pay the policy."
Wow. Right.
That was
amazing.
It.
There you go. That was it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the policy was what, $3 million or $5 million? It was
the policy was $3 million. Anyways, it's a long story, but my client ended up getting 2.65, but we had to hammer out what the other plaintiffs were getting.
Yep.
And the other plaintiffs' lawyers "Oh, I'll call you next week." I was in his face in the judge's chambers, on the courtroom, was accosting him in the hallway. He's like, "Howard, I want to work this out later." I was followed him down the elevator.
Yeah,
I was the basement of the courthouse steps. I was on the street corner. He's like, "Howard, you're not going to let me get back to my office?" I'm like, "No." I'm like, "Let's work out the division of this right now."
Wow.
Yeah.
So did you have to ask your dad for authority to divide it, or did you tell him what the?
No. He referred the case to me. I was handling the case.
That's amazing.
But we were working on it together.
How much confidence does that give you as a new PI attorney?
I got to be honest with you. I had already, different than other lawyers, I tried my first case to full jury 4 months after getting my law license.
Okay.
I'd already tried.
So you were already there.
I'd already tried multiple cases to full jury verdict. I had a number of cases under my belt. I was still a newer lawyer.
Okay. But you were. It was that was a big one though. That was a big one.
Yeah, my large, I had resolved the case for $1 million, maybe a year prior, which was at that time then which at that time would have been my largest result, and then this for 2.65.
I mean, you were talking about going back to work for somebody since you had 50 grand wrapped into it. So
yeah, I was like a little nervous. I was like, it was a lot of money. It's a lot of money 28 years ago.
It still is. Come on.
Yeah, it still is. But at the time, it was all the money in the world.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That great story. Wow, you got some great stories. Give me some advice for like an attorney that desires to go out on their own.
You know, all I could say is everybody has like their own spidey sense of, you know, what's going to work for them or not work for them.
Yep.
So I was talking to a lawyer actually over the weekend, and I asked him the same question. I'm like, what made you decide to go start your own law practice?
Yeah.
And he's like, Howard, I had no business whatsoever. Zero. But he's like, I just knew I was going to be successful, and I knew I could do it. He's a pretty successful lawyer today.
That's awesome.
He's a pretty good lawyer. So people just know, if people just know. But for me, you know, I was already reared in this. I had already, since the time I was in junior high, 5th grade probably, I was already doing this for years. By the time I started my own law practice, like I was already, it was in the water for me. So anyways, I would just say to people, you kind of know what you know. And the other thing I would say is, for me, like when we're talking about law school, I really studied. Like I really knew the law. I worked for somebody that was a taskmaster, and I worked 6.5 days a week hard.
Wow.
So I put my time in, and I knew what I was talking about. So what's happened is a lot of times, even if you are somebody that like somebody will refer you a case, if you don't really know how to be successful as a lawyer, it's also going to be hard to be successful.
Right.
To be a good lawyer, to be a successful lawyer, you got to be a good lawyer.
Right. Yeah, of course. Yeah. So looking back, Howard, what's some advice you might have given your younger self?
I do have to say, I probably could have made my life easier if I would have had a little bit more confidence in myself that it was going to all work out okay. And I do have to say, as at 57 years old and 33 years into being a lawyer, you know, I'm looking at another 17 years out in the horizon to get to 50 at least. And, you know, I'm always a little nervous about how it's all going to come out.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. So, and I mean, maybe that's what drives me is, as a lawyer, you're only as good as your last case.
Yeah.
But there's just sometimes where I wish I could say to myself, like, hey, it's all going to be okay. It's all going to work out. But maybe that's what continues to drive me to try to be successful with it.
Wow. Okay. So you've built a career that you've kind of set out to do. Is there something about your journey that has surprised you or turned out to be like a little more challenging than you expected?
I do think what's challenging for me is that, law, it's not a law business, it's a law practice. And so, you're always working, you're always learning, what have you. The difference for me though is like when I worked for other people or even when I worked for myself, there was no time clock, and my expectation was only to be as good as I felt that I could be. What I'm finding is I have great people that work with me, but I always find it a challenge to continue to add on good staff. I think I have great staff, but it's very difficult for me to have the partners and the associates that I have in my office. And it's not as easy to add on, another good lawyer. For whatever reason, a lot of people, like, working on a weekend for me as a young lawyer, that was just like what I thought lawyers did, or like being into the office late at night. That's what I thought lawyers did.
That's traditional, like being at law school and like looking at all the books and the stacks is like late at night. It was always traditional. But do you think something's changed? Like I was going to ask kind of like about the evolving profession, like how things have changed, since you started or whatnot. Even the associates that you're touching on a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean, I do think like my associates work hard, but in general, I try to be involved in the interview process in my office, and when I do that, I do have to say that I just find socially people are like, look, I'm going to work hard, but here's my 42 hours.
Right.
Here's my 45 hours. I'm like, they'll come in at 9 and, but 6 o'clock, that's what you get. So like if everybody else is 9 to 4, for lawyers, they may be 9 to 6.
Right.
And I'm saying is I got it. And maybe because of technology, like email and AI and whatever, maybe you don't need the number of hours that you used to need, because a lot of that, a lot of time that maybe went to busy work is taken up now.
Well, you've actually led me into the next question, Howard, about like how you feel the profession has changed since you first started out. And there's AI, legal tech solutions. We've had some of them on our podcast talking about how they do time management, how they create medical chronologies, how they they just put it in the system and it flows out this beautiful chronology like in minutes or hours, and you have to go back and refine it a little bit. But have you like integrated any of that with yourself, or like how do you feel about those sort of things?
So I'll tell you, like, just as a story, just because you got me going on like stories. So
great.
As a young lawyer, you go to the courthouse and you see older lawyers, and even doing like motion practice or arguing routine motions, not even a trial, like you watch their style and their skill and how they handled themselves, and you learn your craft. So like I remember once going to the courthouse, and like I heard that the guy was giving closing arguments on a criminal trial. So like I ran over to the courthouse just to like watch the closing.
Yeah.
And this guy was being charged for attempted murder. Okay.
Wow.
And I was like, like, how's he, I'm like listening to the whole thing, and I'm like, how's the guy going to get out of this? It's better than watching a movie or a cliffhanger. And this defense lawyer gets up and he looks at the jury, and I'll remember this for the rest of my life. And maybe this has been done in a million courthouses before. It's like talking a story about sliced bread, but it's the first time I saw it. And this defense lawyer gets up and he's like, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I'd like you to take a good look at my client. Look at him. My client is the scariest MFer you would ever meet in your life. I think you would all agree. He looks like he commits murder. Okay? If my client wanted so-and-so dead, they'd be dead. There was no attempt.
Wow.
That down.
Oh my goodness.
Not guilty attempted murder. If my client wanted them dead, they'd be dead, and you know it.
That's like, isn't that like reverse psychology or something? Like trying to, that's crazy. How long ago was that?
It was a young lawyer, I don't know, 30 years ago story.
Yeah. Wow.
But my point is, you just learn, like, the guy did a whole closing in 2 minutes, not guilty.
Right.
Brilliant. These days, even like us, like we're on Zoom call.
Yep.
You don't get, like, even if the judge buzzes into this room and he's doing that motion, the young lawyer is just doing his own motion. He doesn't get to see another lawyer doing their motion. He doesn't get to see the work.
Right. That's
true. So like they've made the world easier, and everybody could go home earlier. But I find, like, in our generation, like it used to be like you'd hear about like older attorneys and they weren't getting hired and they thought there was age discrimination or whatever.
Right.
You don't hear that anymore. Like people want to hire the 70-year-old lawyers today. They're lawyers.
Yeah. Yeah. They're actual. Yeah.
So anyways, a little bit, the technology is awesome and it makes life easier, but it's good for me. Okay. When you know what you're doing and you've been around the block.
Right. That's a good point.
But the younger lawyers, I think, are really going to miss out on something. And when this jumps to the next level and it's AI and the computer's drafting all the documents or whatever, you know how much knowledge you have having to sit there and draft a document and you're up in the middle of the night and it's just not coming together and you're rewriting words and putting it together. Okay, that's like knowledge central.
Right.
So I'm glad the computer has it, but like, I don't know. I don't know what.
Yeah, no, I completely. I understand what you're saying. I've turned to like at least 2 or 3 people in the last week, and I've been like, college kids are not going to have to do anything anymore. They just put in what their paper's about, and then boom. It's crazy. I mean, it's crazy. Look, I've tested it and used AI a little bit for writing some stuff, but it is incredible, and there's a lot of legal tech out there. But I think your whole view is the whole traditional lawyering. Even what I think my law school class was the last one to have to look at the books, like have to research in the books, and then the second semester they allowed us to use Lexis or Westlaw. But we were like the last class, because I think after that everybody just got to go to Lexis and Westlaw without looking at the books. And now that was several years ago, but now they're just probably using, there's just so much stuff out there that's advanced, so it's going to keep getting advanced. I think there's somewhere in New York or Florida where somebody just put their computer in front of a judge, like a generated guy to like talk about the case. And it was crazy. Not only was it crazy, the guy wasn't even wearing a suit on the TV. He was, please the court. And it was just like, the judge was like, is this AI generated? Is this a real person?
But I will tell you on another note, my son just graduated from high school. My daughter's still in high school. And I got to say, my children and all their friends, each one is more brilliant than the next.
Yeah.
I like look at my own kids and I say to myself, oh God, I mean, like if the stuff that they're doing, if I can only be them. So on the other hand, while I say, like as a 57-year-old, I wish people would be more like this, for my own kids in their own way. They're like doing so much greater stuff than I ever did. And all their friends are doing so much greater stuff than, me and I think my friends, I think we're pretty well accomplished people.
Yep.
And these kids are even better. So,
wow.
With that, maybe it's like every generation is worried about the generation that's going to come next, but it always works out.
Yeah, no, totally. That's good to hear about your kids. And so looking back, Howard, is there a case or moment that made you stop and think, yeah, this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing? Like even in the legal profession, like you didn't do criminal or whatnot. Like was there a time that you had that moment?
I don't know. There was just like this, I only, you like dream of having like your Perry Mason moment in life.
Yeah.
Like you're, like where, you're doing your closing argument every time you're in the shower and you're talking to yourself or you're driving and you're like, you're brilliant. And then as soon as your mouth opens, it's like you're as average can be.
Yeah.
But anyway, there was one time where they were defending this case and they were basically saying they were defending the case by saying that my client couldn't have been hurt how he said that he was hurt because he was like in this other location. And they had like all this surveillance video that they were bringing forward to like say that it was him and it wasn't him or whatever. And anyway, I had this guy on the stand for like 40 minutes, just absolutely grilling this this private investigator that they had in this defense case. And in the middle of it, like the defense lawyer stands up and he goes, We'll stipulate. We understand that we got it wrong, that it was that it was not Mr. Ankin's client, but it was his cousin that looks exactly like him. We agree. He proved it. And I turned to the judge and I'm like, Judge, we don't stipulate. I'm not removing this client from the stand. It's my cross-examination.
Right.
And I just wanted the jury to like hear it. And the judge allowed me to just keep going and going and going. Because I was trying to like make sure that we like magnified the damages in the case.
Wow.
So anyways, like I walked out of there and I had like a younger lawyer with me that I was like training for the trial and all that kind of stuff. And I walked out of there. I'm like, it was like my one like Perry Mason moment. I was like, this is it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
But anyways,
awesome.
I do have to say is without that, I do have to say is there's times where people call me, I'm an injury lawyer, but I'll have people that's like a former client or something. And they'll be like, Howard, you know, my son, he's down on his luck. He doesn't have a lot of money, but he's getting a divorce. Can you just give him a couple minutes of advice? And I'm like, okay, I only got time for this call versus that call.
Right.
And I, you know, just like maybe how my dad trained me, I'm like, well, this was the prior client. And so I'll make that phone call and I'll overtalk somebody like I do. And, you know, I'll give the advice. And when I get off the phone, I made no money. You know, and I'm like, is this a complete waste of time? But then again, I'm like, I feel good about myself.
Yep.
Because, you know, as a lawyer, like, look, you're working hard. It's always about the money, but it's also always about like doing the right thing and helping people. So every time I'm able to like help somebody, I really feel like, okay, this is what I was put on this earth to do, and I'm doing it.
That's awesome. No, that's amazing. It's a great purpose. So, Howard, Ankin Law was recently a sponsor at the 111th Women's Bar Association of Illinois, the installation dinner.
You got that pretty quickly, that information, huh?
Oh yeah, hey. So no, but what does it mean to you to like support and be a part of the legal community? You're also on a lot of boards. You're like a ton of boards and affiliations, which is really cool. Like you're out there and putting yourself out there in the community. One of them is like the board of directors for Chicago Volunteer Services, which is something that's much needed in different communities. But so what do those things mean to you, like the Women's Bar Association of Illinois, like being a sponsor and supporting?
Well, for me, the triumvirate of law is really, you got the legislature that makes the law, and then you got the judiciary that like decides the law. But to me, in order to make the law work, and I don't know that all lawyers feel this way, but I feel very strongly this way, is that the bar associations do the heavy lifting for anything that's like that's not said by the legislature, or for anything that's not defined by the by the judiciary.
Yep.
The issue is who, there has to be people that are, there has to be people that are in that gray area, in the Swiss cheese, the holes that are putting it all together. That's the bar associations. And the bar associations do that work to make the law work for everybody. And so for me, whether it's the women's bar or, in Chicagoland, we have every type of bar, Justinians, like any background that somebody would come from. I feel like I want to support all the various bar associations and let them know that at least my firm is supportive of their cause.
That's awesome. Good for you. So I saw a quote, Howard, and it says, Howard's greatest professional accomplishment continues to be the stability and hope he brings to his clients by securing their livelihood through legal victories.
Where'd you get that one?
Maybe you haven't seen that in a while, but I didn't know if you were going to speak to that. It's on your website. I know people don't look at their website a lot, but I just saw it. I didn't know if like that. I thought that was sort of inspirational, continuing to be the stability and hope bringing to your clients by securing livelihood through legal victories. You're helping your clients out. You're helping them be whole or get above and beyond what they've been damaged for. So, that's obviously a good thing. But I wanted to bring that up and
So I was president of my law school. I was president for my law school's alumni association for a long time, and they'd come in and have to do like speeches to law students, or like for whether I'm interviewing or for new employees in my office. That's just how I say it to everybody.
Yeah.
50% of what you do as a lawyer is providing confidence to your client that everything is going to be okay.
Yep.
The other 50% is your knowledge in making everything okay. So, especially for like young lawyers or for people starting out, you're building this knowledge base on how you're helping people change people's lives. And that's why they hired you, is to make things work. But that scary process, of the time from like the time the plane takes off till it lands and you're going through turbulence, that period of time, that could take a couple of years in the legal process. The client needs to have confidence that while they're going through turbulence, the plane is not going to fall out of the sky and crash and burn.
Right.
You got to give that confidence. And so I really hope that people that are in my world, I really hope that they have confidence that, it's going to be okay. And since I haven't crashed and burned yet, knock on wood, in any case, and it's always worked out okay, it gives me a lot of, gives me a lot of support for myself to tell people it's going to be okay. But for somebody that like getting people nervous and they're making them nervous about their situation, I don't really know that that's the lawyer's job.
No.
I got to give confidence.
So something cool about Howard is in 2019, it looks like you threw out a first pitch at the Chicago Cubs game. And not only did you do that, you were wearing an Andre Dawson jersey, which is really cool. Player from like the 80s, 90s, like love it. What was that like?
So you're doing all your research, but nobody is going to argue that you're not a lawyer, that you didn't come prepared today.
No, thank you very much. That's a big compliment coming from you. I mean, I know how hard you've worked now throughout the years, so thank you. Yes, I did. I think it's awesome. I actually took my son to his first major league game yesterday. Are you a baseball fan?
I'm a huge baseball fan.
Yeah, so I'll tell you about that after. But what was that like? Like, I couldn't figure out like what the celebration was or the ceremony, but that was really cool. And I love that jersey, by the way. That's pretty sweet.
So it's multifactorial again, but one of the ways in which I market my law practice is like if somebody would say to you, "Hey, I'm looking for a lawyer in Chicago," I'd hope you'd be like, "There's this guy Howard Ankin, call him."
Yeah.
But like whatever, somebody's like, "Where do you like get a good pizza from? Where's your dentist?" People ask people for referral.
Right.
All right. So some people have a strong base of people in their world, and they have people to ask questions of. Some people might not have that strong base. So for me, where do they get the person that they could get that trust confidence factor and that they're getting the right referral? So I have a lot of athletes on all the professional sports team here in Chicagoland, and a lot of people that have like daytime talk shows and news people, that kind of stuff. So when I do my commercials, when I advertise my practice, it's basically, professional baseball players, basketball players, hockey players, what have you.
That's awesome.
That are standing next to me in the commercials saying, "Hey, Howard Ankin's a good guy."
Oh, I got to see those. Where can I find those? Like, I'm a big sports fan. I mean,
when you go to my website, you could just see like
really. I must have missed those. Okay.
And, yeah, they're all. You could see like the hundreds of commercials that I've done in my career.
Okay.
But anyway, so Andre Dawson was a guy. When I first started out, he was like one of the very first pitchmen for me for my law career, and that was actually a signed Andre Dawson throwback jersey.
Oh, it's totally throwback. I loved it.
And while I keep talking to you about my summer jobs, I actually worked at Wrigley Field in DC Park for the Cubs and the White Sox, and I sold like Cokes and Pepsis and peanuts and whatever. That was like what I did in my high school days. I worked at the ballpark selling that stuff, and watch it in after the seventh inning stretch, then watching the last couple innings of the game.
Would you say Wrigley's like Fenway a little? Like just how like sort of classic it is, and like not really. I mean, obviously it's branded, but it's not like crazy over the top.
Probably the best two ballparks in
Okay.
all the ballparks in the, of
Yeah,
the
that's
United
what I was
States.
trying to actually tell my son yesterday. I'm like, this is kind of like I was at Wrigley like 15 years ago. But anyway, so one more question. So you have
We
this,
don't have the Green Monster, but it's great.
yeah. Oh man. So you have
Let
a.
me tell you something great when you
Go
come to
ahead.
Wrigley or for people. The greatest thing about Wrigley Field is, it's right in our like Lakeview area, and so it's a highly residential neighborhood. It's a great neighborhood. There's tons of bars and restaurants and
Yep.
all types of stuff, and they made the surrounding area is just like all like it's just a great experience just to be there. So the greatest thing about the Cubs is if they're having a winning season, they're having a losing season, it doesn't
Doesn't
matter
matter.
because
Yeah.
Cubs fans just want to be there.
Yeah.
It's just such an inviting environment to even go to a Cubs game.
They're like an endearing like baseball team. You know, people.
Yeah.
It's sort of like an endearing like I feel like the Cubs, and then it's I don't know. They're like, how can you not like really like the Cubs? You know what I mean?
And
No matter what other.
Since our World Series year, we're having a great year this year. So
I
it's
have a
a
brand
great
new
time to
Cubs
get the
t-shirt.
Cubs hat on.
I have a brand new Cubs t-shirt. I was in Chicago visiting a friend like last fall. We went to the Patriots Bears game. Of course, I hit up the store after. But so anyway, so you have a series called Every Day at Ankin, and
Yeah.
you've launched a podcast.
I got to tell you, I wasn't as good as you, Benny, and I didn't have enough time for it. So it was like very short lived.
Okay, I didn't know if that was your staff or you wanted to say something about it or whatnot.
I have to say is, I think to do these podcasts well is like being you.
Thank you.
Like you know how to ask, questions, you know how to help make things endearing. You
Thank
do your
you.
research, and I just didn't have. I have to be honest. It really ended for me. I just wanted to be a lawyer. Like I
Yeah.
wanted to put my time. I wanted to put my time into doing law stuff, and it was like the podcast. It was like if I didn't really want to be a lawyer for me, because I couldn't do everything.
No,
I
you
just
can't.
I just didn't have enough time to do it well. And if it's not going to go well, I don't want to be a part of
So
it.
I didn't know if that was one of your employees. Because look, Howard, you have what 110 employees.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if somebody like launched it for you. I mean, you can still keep it going like that, and reach out to me if anybody wants to talk about it or whatever. But that's awesome.
If I ever resurrect it, I am going to talk to you because you are
Yeah.
definitely the podcast guru.
Hey, I love it, and I appreciate that. I'll take that. That makes me feel warm and fuzzy, So,
Yeah.
Howard, do we leave anything out today that you wanted to bring up, or any advice, or anything that I missed?
Well, I do want to bring up that my phone number is 312-600-0000. And if anybody has, an injury case in the state of Illinois, especially in the around the Chicagoland area, I do auto accidents, trucking accidents, work injuries, medical malpractice, products liability. I also do Social Security disability, mass torts. If it's a contingency fee matter involving injury, my office does it, and I'm passionate about being a lawyer, and I'm passionate about helping people. So 312-600-0000, I'm here to help.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for coming on. I'm glad we got it done, and we did the episode. And please stay right there. I'm just going to close off and tell everybody thank you for tuning in. And wherever you are in the world today, enjoy yourselves. Cheers.